Welcome to Module 3. In this module, we are going to discuss Microsoft 365 in Word. So we're going to see how we're going to create, edit, and be a lot more expressive in our Word when we begin to use Copilot to help us build our document, summarize our document, and also to be more in line with what we want to express ourselves. In this module, we are going to also talk about some prompt best practices. We have been discussing how to use Copilot in various Microsoft 365 tools. Now, we're going to focus exclusively on Microsoft Word. We're going to see how we can use the power of the AI, power of the intelligence, to help us enhance our writing. And writing is critically important for us. We want to be able to really sound very professional, create professional documents, and have AI as assistant. We can now really create some draft, create some editing, create some final documents that are really classy and prepared for our deliveries. So with that, how do I use Copilot in Word? Well, we are going to begin to use this for streamlining our writing. Also, be more interactive, what we are going to be able to do, and also be able to work with Copilot with those expressive configurations, using open-ended questions, also open-ended conversation with Copilot. There are some rigid prompts that we can use, but we also may want to begin to use interactive kind of discussions. Now, why is prompting really important when it comes into the writing? Well, prompt is going to be important because that's the way we interact with AI. So it's very significant that the way we converse with the AI, it needs to be in a way that is well crafted, it is prepared, it is detailed. So if we have vague prompts, we are going to get vague responses. So we want to make sure that we have prompts that are more specific. We have common prompts that I can use, just create a document, draft an article, but then we have enhanced prompt. We have a prompt that's going to help us be a lot more expressive, the final product, for example. And this is something that we want to be able to do. I want to be able to use common prompts, but at the same time, be able to draft appropriately. As an example would be if I have a prompt that simply says, summarize this document. Well, Copilot is going to summarize the document, but I can enhance this prompt by saying, hey, I want you to create a brief summary of this document, also focus on this particular section, extract the key points for this document. This becomes a more expressive implementation. That's how we want customers to look at this. How do I go to the next step of using Copilot to enhance my productivity? Summarizations, for example, I can ask Copilot to simply summarize a point on a document, but I can also ask Copilot to be more comprehensive. I want you to summarize, I want you to look at the highlights of the main points, look for any decisions that have been made, look for a specific bulletized approach to get this more clear, more understanding of this context. So as we look at building prompts, we want to be able to look at prompt as a way to express ourselves with the AI. And the more expressive we are, the more expressive the responses are going to be as well. So drafting documents with Word is going to help us do what? Well, let's say, for example, I have an idea and I want to start from scratch. I can do that. I can simply ask Copilot, I want to be able to do this. I want to create this document. I want to get this feedback. So I can simply go into Copilot, just as I did in PowerPoint, go into Word and I say, I want you to create this document based on a particular suggestion. If I have another document, I could do that as well. I can start a document from an existing document. I can also ask Copilot to create based on its own experience. Copilot has been trained on what we call large language models. There are a lot of processes, a lot of content that Copilot has already been trained and knows. Can we extract that from Copilot? Yes, from a conversation. So I can use elaborate prompts, or I can have a back and forth discussion with Copilot to enhance the content that I'm going to be creating. And as I mentioned, I may also have an existing document. Maybe I have one document that is a detailed proposal. I want to extract content from that proposal and create another document in Microsoft Word. That is also very powerful. Now, when I'm using Copilot for drafting my content in Microsoft Word, I can simply open up Copilot and then begin to begin to expose what I want exactly Copilot to do. I can say, start by creating maybe a summary. I want to be able to extract some content from this document. I want to elaborate. I want to create a new fresh content for me. I can really ask Copilot to help me write better, make it more compelling. And I can also make suggestions. Maybe I want the content to be longer or shorter or more concise, or I want to have a different tone. Maybe I want it to be more formal or more informal. I myself prefer all my writing to be informal. So any document that I ask Copilot to write, I will say, make this informal, but make it compelling, make it concise. And if I want something that is inspiring, I will tell Copilot, make this prompt inspiring as well. So when you look at a Copilot pane in Microsoft Word, I can begin to do that. I can ask to select, and I can ask to suggest a particular content. And I can then enter my prompt and say, do this in this particular style. Now, one thing that I can do as well, I can ask Copilot to be more specific, right? To be more concise, or to deliver the content in a particular way. And there are many ways for us to create prompts to be able to do that, particularly in Microsoft Word. Now, if I am working with Microsoft Word and I want to be able to draft a file, like I said, I can reference an existing file to be able to build my new content. To do that, I simply use the /. That / calls Microsoft Graph and says, okay, these are the files that I can use on Copilot. Now, this sample prompt in here that you can see, well, allows me to do that. I want to be able to create or refine or summarize or create a proposal based on, and I can put this / and bring in the file. Maybe I have a marketing content, a marketing strategy, I have an employee document or some training. I can summarize, I can elaborate, I can expand that based on the content. We are going to take a look at those in a couple minutes when we look at the examples. Now, how do I elevate my content using Copilot? Well, one of the things that I'm going to do when I look at this elevating the content is improving the quality of my writing. I myself think, oh, I do well writing, but I'm not an expert in all the nuances of writing. Maybe I may want to ask Copilot to make a suggestion on a new way to say something or draft the content in a more clear way. I can also be more interactive on this writing. I want you to rewrite this in this way. Oh, it looks good. Do it again and again until I feel comfortable with the way the outcome of this is being taken. So another thing that I can do is the type of text. Maybe I can ask Copilot to elaborate the text that has been created or convert the text into a table format. In many documents, a table approach is a better way to display some content. And with that, we also look in terms of documentation summarization. I may have a very large document. I want to summarize to create another document or simply to summarize to be able to comprehend. Very similar to the interactive learning prompts that we have created, the real-time quizzes. That's a good example to say, I want you to summarize this content and ask me questions about that. In here, I can do the summarization of the documents. Now, when I'm writing document, it's important to also focus on the clarity of my prompt, as I mentioned. I may have a prompt that has, hey, I have this content, I want to be able to improve on this, but I also can elaborate that. Well, I want to rewrite this content because I want to maybe speak to the C-level suite as opposed to my peers. I want to be more expressive. I want to function in this way. If you are a marketing strategist, leverage that. What is the goal that you want to get from this prompt? So that idea that I want to have, that proposal that I want to be able to write. I want to be expressive to Copilot on how I want that to be created. And I can adjust the tone, as I said. Maybe I want it to be more formal. I want to be more informal. I want to sound like someone specifically. Now, this is important for me to understand that the more context that I provide to Copilot, the better the outcome will be. And this really needs to align to that. The content that you want needs to align. So when I create a prompt and I ask for a particular content, do pay attention, do read that, see if this is in line with what you want. Ask to be longer or to be shorter. This is going to be the focus of our discussion in our demonstrations as well. So one of the things we're going to see here is that when I want to convert document to a table or a section of a document, I can simply highlight the document that I want and I say, convert this into a table. I like it, I can keep it. If I don't like it, I can ask to rewrite that content as well. Maybe add additional bullet points if that's the case. So if you think about the type of questions that I can ask, right, in terms of Copilot, well, one of the things that I can ask is in terms of action items. I can look at how Copilot in Word is going to be able to answer specific questions that I have. Once that question is answered, do I keep it or do I change? So one of the things that we can do is, we call this the snowball effect. I can ask questions and continue on this interactive approach until I have all the points that I want made. It doesn't need to be just one time, ask the questions and be done. I can continue this iterative approach with Copilot as well. Now, let's look at automatic, we call this automatic summaries. When I first open Microsoft Word with Copilot, I can see that I can automatically summarize the document. On the very top, it says, hey, I can, part of the default, open up the document and summarize the document. That could be very interesting, but maybe I don't want that. I can very well stop this as well. It's easy to really summarize, do the document scanning and summarize at any point. Also, customizing in terms of the summaries. Maybe I want to be able to do it, maybe I don't. Maybe I want to summarize just a particular section of a particular document. And it's going to be seamless. If I choose to have a summarization of the document created, I can simply set as a default, I open the document, every document is going to be summarized. So I can quickly scan the document instead of having to read through the entire document to figure out what the content is. Now, in terms of the Copilot from a summary perspective, I can simply, as I said, request a summary. And that will be simple, say just summarize this document, but maybe I want to be able to summarize and request specific things from that. Maybe I wanted to summarize and I want to extract any references from this document, extract any names, extract any areas. This is something that I do occasionally. I have a very large document. I want to see, is this document valid? Can you validate some of the content that you found? Go out there and see if the message in this document is real. Is it mentioned any other place? Or somebody just said this because that's how they felt, right? So there are references that I can do that. So when I create a document and I ask for a summary, I may do that. I may want to be able to give or request references to where the content was made. So what I'd like to do now is work with you, show you some examples of the power of leveraging Copilot in Microsoft Word to help us create, summarize, be more expressive, and of course, be able to elaborate on our conversation using Copilot in Microsoft Word. Here we are in Microsoft Word. I am going to start with a blank document. As soon as I open the document, notice on the top here, I have the Copilot symbol. That means this is where I can start having my prompts and a conversation with Copilot. I see product insights from a file, which means if I select this, I can then select files in my organization within my tenant that I can summarize, I can work with. A product summary. So in this case, if I want a summary of a file, I can do that. I can also ask for a proposal. Maybe I want to create a proposal from a file. But supposedly, I want to create a fresh content in Microsoft Word. Well, let's say I'm a project manager and I want an outline of a new project, but I want to use the PMI approach. Perfect, let's do that. I'm going to say create a new proposal for a solar-powered, I would say a solar-powered moon station, okay? And I'm going to tell Copilot to please use the PMI standard for the proposal. All right, so I'm saying leverage the PMI standard and create a new proposal. So all the sections that will be available on these proposals are going to be captured by Copilot in the generation of this document. And here it comes. So Copilot is going to look at the knowledge it has and it's going to make a proposal. That is an executive summary. I see the objectives. I see the project scope. And it's going to continue filling in all of those sections that the PMI stands for. That is the project conclusion as well. So I have all the sections. Now notice that when I'm working with Microsoft Word, it shows down here that I have an option of keeping the new content. And this is version 1 of 1. I can look at the content and say, this kind of looks good, but maybe there is something else that I can do. Notice the example says, make it more formal. That's right. Maybe I'm making this presentation for my investors. I want it to be more formal. So I say, make it for my investor pitch. So what I'm telling Copilot is I want to elevate the kind of language for this proposal because I'll be presenting to specific investors. And Copilot understands that context and is going to then modify the document for that purpose. Now, because I have a second version of this option, what does it say? Version number 1 is the original. I still have it. And now I have version number 2. Excellent. I can choose between the two of them. And also, I can say, you know what? Regenerate. If I ask Copilot to regenerate, that's the button, it will regenerate this content and try it again. So I can then decide between the 3 of these options. Or I can even tell it even additional context. For example, I may say add a SWOT analysis to the document. SWOT analysis of, let me say, of the top 3 competitors to the proposal. So Copilot would go out there, look to see if there are any additional competition, and then it's going to add a SWOT analysis to our proposal. And I can go down through the proposal and take a look. There's the project scope, that is the approach, planning, execution, and budget. And I should have a SWOT analysis as well. There it is. There is the SWOT analysis for the top 3 competition. So even before the proposal is created, I can continue to add or modify content or change the tone as I see fit. Now, supposedly I like what this is done. I will say keep it. So this is the version number 3. Now remember, because this was not complete, now it is. Those other 2 versions that I have created are now gone. I don't need them anymore. My document is ready. Now, I did mention about an opportunity to create tables from a content. So let's say, for example, here on the project scope, I have an opportunity to select these 3 bullet points or these 5 bullet points and say, maybe I want to rewrite this or I want to make this into a table. It says right there I can auto rewrite, tells Copilot to use its magic to rewrite this content on a particular style that I want, or simply say, write this as a table. Now, even writing as a table, it will give me a suggestion below what I have about how the table is going to look like. Now, I have a table of category and description. Now the category energy, infrastructure, and description, is that an option of creating a third column on this table? What option for a third column would you recommend? So maybe there's an opportunity to add a third column to my table, and I want Copilot to suggest that. And here it is. We have a category, we have a description, and I have a potential benefit. So notice that not only I can convert what I have in a particular format, in this case a table format, I can also ask Copilot to suggest additional options, and it will then elaborate. Now this is version number 2 with the 3 columns. If I like this version, I can simply say keep it. Now notice that I am keeping it. I'm not replacing the existing content. If I want to replace the existing content, I'm going to keep this, and then I can delete the previous content that was already there. There we go. So now I only have my table that I generated. Now looking at my document, it seems to me that I have all the sections in there, but I think the conclusion is a little bit short. So I can highlight just the conclusion, and I can ask Copilot to auto-rewrite, or I can ask Copilot to make this section a bit longer. I just want it to be a little bit longer. Let's see what Copilot is going to introduce to make this section, or the conclusion, a little bit longer. Now, the initial conclusion had quite a bit of details, but a little bit longer will be better. There it is. I have a longer content. If I like it, I can say keep it, and I can then replace the previous content. Now you notice that this section inside of the document is what I have been using with Copilot. Now, supposedly, I want to work with additional content on this. When I am in Word and I click on the top section in the menu bar, I can then select Copilot. This is going to open the Copilot chat, and I can have a conversation about this document. I can very well say, from Copilot, summarize this document. Now, the summarization of the document, Copilot is going to leverage its knowledge to go in and summarize the entire document. Here it is, with the specific sections of the document that were used for this summary. I also have other prompts: make the summary more formal, maybe make the summary more casual. And if I want, I can also bring additional context and click the Insert button to update my document. Also notice on the top in here, I have some examples of prompts. For example, summarize a document, generate an image. Oh, this is nice. Maybe I want a new image. Generate an image to represent my solar-powered lunar station. Perfect. Generate an image to represent the solar-powered lunar station. I wanted to make it futuristic, colorful, and appealing. All right. So now Copilot is going to leverage the designer, just as we saw on PowerPoint, and is going to create 4 sample images that I can choose from. So now I'll be able to take one of those images and incorporate that into my document. Now, supposedly I have a document, maybe an Excel document, a PowerPoint document that I want to refer. Also, here from Word, as we know, if I use the slash, I can call. I am in work mode, and I can talk to files in my organization. I can also talk to people. Maybe I want to bring in the latest conversation that I had with someone in my organization, maybe a meeting that we had, a chat that we discussed, a conversation that we had. I can bring that as part of the document as well, or refer to that to build my document. So I can access files, people, meetings. I can also access emails. Maybe there is an email that I received from a customer related to this project. I can incorporate as part of the proposal as well. All right, let's see what the image is. Oh, I love this image. Let's select this image number 1. There it is. And let's insert this image to our document. There it is, right below the conclusion. I have an image of our solar-powered lunar station. My document looks quite good. Now remember, in order for me to use this document and share and collaborate with my team, I need to make sure this document is saved in my OneDrive. So let's go ahead and say Save As, and let's put this document and browse it. And here it is, MS-4018. And let's put this in Docs, Personal Proposal for a Solar. Save that. We did discuss the document sensitivity and labeling. And here it is. When we create a document, if it is general or public or confidential, Copilot is going to adhere to that. So if Copilot is your assistant, is working with a confidential document, any document related to that creation is also going to be confidential and created. So we have a document. I was able to configure it. I was able to draft and add it, and I have a proposal that is now ready to be created into a presentation or be able to be worked with my customers. Now that we have seen a demonstration of Copilot in Microsoft Word, I have a simple exercise here for you to try at your own leisure. In this example, you are going to look at as if you were a project manager, and you are tasked with creating a very comprehensive project plan. So similar to what you saw that I created, you'll be able to, for your organization, create this specific project. With that, you're going to have a couple exercises. Number 1, you are going to import some notes. So you could have done that, is optional. And then from there, you're going to draft a content. So again, you saw that I could draft a fresh content, or you are going to be able to pick specific document that we have already created. And then from that, you're going to convert some content into a table and then summarize your document. Again, very similar to what we were able to accomplish. And this brings us to the knowledge check. In this knowledge check, you notice I created a new prompt for you, and I encourage you to try this prompt at your own time. First, as we mentioned in terms of Copilot prompt, it is going to set the stage by asking Copilot to function as an expert in Microsoft 365 Copilot, create 3 multiple choice questions about Microsoft 365 specifically for Word, how it functions, and also presenting all the questions together instead of one by one, but all the questions at the same time, and then wait for you to respond. Well, you're going to say 1A, 2A, or 2B, and then 3. Once you are done with that, it is going to tell you which of the questions are correct, if you did well, and is going to then give you an opportunity to see all the correct answers as well. So another way for you to exercise and to practice your knowledge. And this brings us to the end of this module. On this module, we are able to look at Microsoft Copilot 365 in Word. We look at being able to create new content, significantly reducing the time for us to create a proposal, to write complex, comprehensive projects and processes, making it much, much easier for us when we are trying to introduce new product, create a summary, or create a new project. And with that, we look at managing the document. I can start from scratch, or I can then begin to use existing documents to elaborate, to summarize, to expand, and also to change the tone of the document. Maybe I want it to be more formal. I want it to be less formal, more informal. And with that, we also look at the summarization. I can simply ask Copilot, summarize this document, take the key points to that. Maybe you have a large proposal you want to summarize as well. Somebody submit you that document, and you want to summarize it. I hope this was a useful module, and you're looking forward to use this, what you have just learned, in your Microsoft Word going forward. Now let's take a quick break. When we return, we are going to go into module number 4, where we are going to be discussing Microsoft 365 Copilot in Teams.